Hello, I'm Don Tapscott.
And I'm Alex Tapscott.
And this is What's on Tap. Alex, the big news, the big action this week is the whole digital asset community is up in arms about a provision in the infrastructure bill that could kind of drastically reframe how the industry is regulated. Ostensibly, there were provisions in there that would generate another $28 billion in taxes to support the infrastructure initiative. Then there's been a flurry of activity to try and fix this problem. What's going on?
Yeah, that's right. So the infrastructure bill is what they call an omnibus bill. So even though it's supposed to only deal with infrastructure, it's actually 2,700 pages long and includes dozens of new laws. And there's one in particular that will affect the cryptocurrency and the broader blockchain-based industry. Now, it's important to note that at the time of recording this, there's been a lot of activity to soften and clarify that language. But it's important to look at what the path was to here. So initially, the language basically said that under the tax code, the definition of a broker was going to be expanded to include various actors in the cryptocurrency industry. Let's assume in good faith that the framers of the law intended this for actual brokers. So companies like Coinbase, for example, that act on behalf of clients in facilitating the trading of digital assets. Of course, those kinds of entities should be required to report to the IRS in the same way that any other broker would, like an investment bank. But the initial language of the law was so vague that it had some people concerned that it can include other potential actors in the crypto asset industry. For example, it could include miners, or it could include decentralized exchanges, or it could even include individual users that are staking in proof of stake networks. Plenty of people stake tokens to these networks, and by doing so, they're facilitating the inner workings of that network and could therefore be captured under this law. So basically, it would have been impossible for individuals or miners or any of these entities to comply with the law because they don't have clients and they're not acting on behalf of others. So fortunately, the crypto asset industry has matured in a way where there are some really important and really good institutions and entities in Washington, D.C. that have been working tirelessly with lawmakers, many of whom are very supportive of this industry, like Senator Pat Toomey, for example, to clarify this language. And those are groups like the Chamber of Digital Commerce, which is an important partner of the BRI, and also Coin Center. And these groups have managed to clarify the language of the law so that it's clear that it only applies to entities where they are acting on behalf of someone else. Now, that's not as far as I think a lot of proponents would have liked. I think a lot of people would have liked to see the word client in there, because it is still possible as a miner or as a staker that you could be captured in that if the law were to be applied as broadly as possible. But I think this is obviously a very important win. And I think it's an interesting sort of vignette in the ongoing battle, or maybe not battle, the ongoing back and forth between an emerging industry that really sort of stands apart from the traditional financial industry and maybe isn't just can't be described in the same way, and this legacy institution, these entities like regulators that have certain responsibilities. And, I think it's a reminder of the importance of not being too hasty and being sure that you understand what it is you're trying to govern or regulate. And it reminded me of the work we did in the book in talking about this. And it's amazing to see how far we've come, but still how much there is to do. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Well, just to remind people about the book, that we talked about the red flag law, which was introduced in the early days of the automobile in Britain, where if you were to drive an automobile, you needed a driver, you needed a navigator, and you needed someone walking ahead of the vehicle with a red flag. And some historians have said that law actually slowed down the development of the British automobile industry. A more current one is in the 1990s, and I witnessed this, that there were proposals to make every website have a CB license. So it's a problem of when you have a new paradigm that leaders of the old have difficulty embracing the new. And of course, vested interests fight against change. And there's both of those factors happening here. There's lack of knowledge, where regulators kind of charge ahead, but there's also, you might say, a more malicious, to be harsh, character here, where there are different vested interests that are want to inhibit the development of this whole thing. So we spent a lot of time talking about this in our big report that we did, the Biden-Harris report, and it was called "New Directions for Government in the Digital Age." And the report was addressing the need for government and regulators and lawmakers to get up to speed about digital assets, blockchain, cryptocurrencies, and so on. And when it comes to regulation, we tried to explain that this regulatory infrastructure affecting digital assets is a very complex one. You've got a financial services regulation that's highly specialized, and it's spread across all kinds of agencies around securities, commodities, currencies, tax, and others. And it would be great to have better clarity amongst all these institutions. And the starting point on that is to have good knowledge by regulators about what's happening here. I think we can get some comfort from the fact that in this specific infrastructure goof up, that the government lawmakers and have been open to receiving input from the community. Absolutely. And have in fact changed their point of view, and that's a great thing. Because there should be no draconian or otherwise legislation introduced in this area without a broad, collaborative, and consultory process.
Yeah, and this is probably not something unique to cryptocurrencies or to blockchain writ large. I think that there are probably a lot of I guess what would be called special interest groups, but really, industries that are affected by a massive sweeping piece of legislation like this. So if anything, it's maybe a sign of the blockchain industry growing up that it has advocates in DC that are sufficiently connected to actually affect that kind of change. And it's also a sign of the times that there are lawmakers who, have been thinking about this and have reached the conclusion that this is an important industry, that it's potentially strategic to the United States for various reasons, and that it should be nurtured, not crushed. And so obviously, it's what's that old joke? It's like a son-in-law, not what you were expecting, but it will do. This is
that's a golf joke, right?
That's a golf joke. Yeah.
That shot was a son-in-law.
Or maybe don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. So I think we ended up with a good outcome here. Obviously, it could have been better, but this is one of those things I think is a harbinger of what's to come. I think this is not the last word, but the first on this issue. So we'll see. We'll see how it all goes.
And if you want to follow this issue in more detail, we're working on it here at the BRI, and the real leader is our partner, the Chamber of Digital Commerce. And so just check into them. The other side of this is the language is evolving, and it's changed, it's improved. But the Chamber also and their lawyers have received assurances that the bill will not cover miners, node operators, validators, and so on. Now, these are assurances. We'd like to see that in writing. But there's also some historical precedent here, too, that we can rely on as well. So maybe we'll pick this up next week and just see how it all worked out. It's like Shakespeare in Love, did it work out? I don't know. It did. How come? I don't know. It's a mystery. But it's a good point that reminds us that we all need to be active and vigilant, because let's face it here, this is not just the evolution of a new technology. It's a battle.
Yeah.
There are the people who understand overall, not that they're the source of all knowledge, but that they understand what this thing is and what it represents. And those who do not, and those who do, but would like this to not proceed. So it's all about the relationship of forces between the forces, to be hyperbolic, the forces of good and the forces of not good. And we need to be active and ensure that our know-how and our sensible views are brought to the table in a way that's effective.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's also worth pointing out that this is different. It's different from the internet. It's similar to the internet in that it's a new paradigm, and it's causing some confusion, dislocation, because it's just different from the way the world works. But it's also the financial industry that it's primarily affecting today. Our view at the BRI obviously is that blockchain is a technology that will affect all industries, and we're already seeing that. But today, at least, it's financial services mostly. And the fact is, the financial industry is, and always has been, far more strictly regulated than information industries like publishing and, of course, and communications. And there are rules around that. There's an FTC and there's a Telecommunications Act and all that stuff, but it's not nearly the same as it is for financial services. So this is it's not a hard truth, but it's a fact of life for entrepreneurs and industry actors, that they're going to have to be in a collaborative relationship, or at least in a ongoing dialogue with the people who make the rules, because there's just no escaping the fact that they're going to have to scale their companies in a regulated environment. And it's up to the regulators and the policymakers to not simply apply the models of the past to this industry, but to understand what it is and how it's different, so that we can actually create a solution, like a set of standards or laws or what have you, that allows the industry to thrive. So that is the defining story for this week, and probably will be one of the key trend lines that we're going to have to follow here for the next few years.
I know you'll be talking about all of this in your upcoming book, says Don, plug, for the digital asset revolution. So for those of you who don't know, at the Blockchain Research Institute, we are now publishing a book quarterly. And we've got so far the Financial Services Revolution, edited by Alex, the major piece, the Supply Chain Revolution, edited by me, with a major piece. In October, the Platform Revolution, and we've inserted a new one in here called the Digital Asset Revolution. Alex, you want to say just a word about that?
Well, digital assets have exploded in value, and we're seeing various different kinds of digital assets, obviously, that are finding really strong product market fit. Everything from stable coins to NFTs to the wild world of DeFi and others. And to date, there hasn't really been a book that's helped to clarify what's really going on here. We started with a taxonomy for digital assets in Financial Services Revolution. In fact, originally in the updated version of Blockchain Revolution, where we talked about these different kinds of assets. And we're going to be building on that taxonomy and talking about how these things are not only finding adoption in the crypto asset world, but how they could ultimately reshape big parts of the economy, different marketplaces. It's a big topic. It's a big bite to chew, but I think it's something that's urgently needed. And honestly, it's the kind of thing that I hope will not only be useful for people in the industry, but be useful for people who are trying to understand this better, including regulators, government officials, leaders of existing organizations who might eventually intersect, who will actually, I should say, inevitably intersect with this world. So that's a project that's ongoing. I don't know which quarter you're referring to, but it's not imminent. It's something that's going to take time to get right. That's for sure.
Yeah. And speaking of books, I just got a note here from our good friend Chris Giancarlo, the former head of the CFTC. and he's now head of the Digital Dollar Project. And his book is now available for pre-order on Amazon. He actually asked me to give a jacket quote, which I'm excited about doing. But the book is called Crypto Dad, The Fight for the Future of Money. And that's a great crypto dad. I guess it'd be crypto grandfather or something over here. But and I'm sure that's going to be a good book where he will make the case that moving forward with the digital dollar, a crypto fiat currency in the United States is critical, not just for the future of money, but for the future of the United States and for the future of democracy, really, in the world.
Yeah. Well, Chris has been a great collaborator. Actually, one funny thing, which is that lost amidst all this talk about the infrastructure bill, is that the new SEC chairperson, Gary Gensler, made a whole variety of comments about the industry yesterday. And Chris had an interesting tweet, which is that that's all well and good, but the reality is that the CFTC, the institution that he used to run, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, has had a mandate to regulate parts of this industry for years. And at least today, the Biden administration has not gotten an appointee to run that group through the Senate, which, well, it's not a political comment. Maybe it's gridlock in the Senate. Maybe it's, what have you. But the point is, it's interesting that, hey, what about us over here, the CFTC? We're the ones who approved Bitcoin futures. We're the ones who, because Bitcoin and other crypto assets have been legally categorized as a commodity, actually we're kind of important to all of this. So I think that was an interesting point that he made as well.
Yep. Anything else this week?
No, that's what's on tap, I think, for this week.
Okay. I mean, there's lots else going on, but maybe we'll end it there. There's another week available to get your nomination in for the Enterprise Blockchain Awards. And to do that, you go to blockchainrevolutionglobal.com and look under awards. blockchainrevolutionglobal.com. And we'll be having a big fancy black tie ceremony on November 16th in Toronto, be broadcast globally to a bunch of nodes around the world. And hopefully this year it will be a largely face-to-face thing. Last year, of course, we had to do this using hologram technology where we beamed ourselves onto a virtual stage. A shout out for the BRI. We won the Biz Bash Awards for the best online award ceremony. So I'm not sure what that means. I think it means we beat out the Grammys and some other pretty cool award ceremonies. So get your nomination in Enterprise Blockchain Awards. There's a whole bunch of different categories for that. So I guess that's it for this week. We'll see you in a week. What's on tap? Take care.